Every gilded cage is built with walls of comfort. The only question is what you're paying for them.
Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Look around you. We're told we live in an era of unprecedented convenience and connection, aren't we?
We really are.
The promise of the sharing economy, the allure of access over ownership, the dream of effortless living, it sounds incredibly appealing, almost utopian. Imagine less burden, more freedom, a life unencumbered by the weight of material possessions.
It's true. We're constantly immersed in this narrative of seamless experience. From the ride-sharing apps that conjure a car with a tap, to streaming services that deliver an endless universe of entertainment.
Right.
From gig work promising flexibility to subscription models for almost everything imaginable, it's a very sleek, user-friendly interface to an economic landscape that's rapidly evolving right beneath our feet.
And today we're taking a deep dive into that very narrative. We're going to look beyond those shiny, user-friendly interfaces and ask a crucial question. Is this truly about community, efficiency, and a lighter way of living for all of us?
Or is it something else?
Or is it a more subtle, perhaps even unconscious push towards a system where the phrase, "you own nothing and be happy," becomes the new mandated reality?
A provocative idea.
Our mission is to truly understand who really profits when we, the users, the workers, the consumers, give up ownership for access. We'll explore the intricate layers of control at play, from economic structures to psychological nudges, and examine who genuinely benefits from this profound shift in our relationship with resources and work. Let's really unpack this. The shifting landscape of ownership, from possessing to accessing. So, to truly understand how this dynamic plays out, we first need to look at the very foundation of our modern lives, how we relate to ownership itself.
Okay.
We're witnessing a seismic shift from a world where owning things was the norm to one where accessing them is increasingly prevalent. Think about the rise of the gig economy and these pervasive subscription models that, on the surface, promise a kind of freedom.
That's the narrative we're given, isn't it?
Yeah.
The public rhetoric around the gig economy, for instance, heavily emphasizes flexibility and entrepreneurship.
Be your own boss.
Exactly. You hear stories of individuals being their own boss, setting their own hours, escaping the traditional 9-to-5, and reducing burdens like car ownership for daily commuting.
Right.
The idea is that you gain autonomy, shed responsibility, and become a free agent in the marketplace. It sounds incredibly liberating, almost like a return to a rugged individualism.
It certainly does, but here's where the story gets much more complex, because the reality often paints a starkly different picture. Beneath that gleaming facade of freedom, there's a systemic precarity that profoundly defines gig work.
Yeah.
It's often anything but stable or empowering.
What's truly insightful here is how this model has managed to reframe corporate irresponsibility as individual empowerment.
How?
We're told we're our own bosses, when in fact for many it means taking on all the risks typically borne by an employer, while platforms extract a significant portion of the profit from our precariousness. Gig workers frequently lack the most basic traditional employment protections. No health insurance, no paid leave, no guaranteed minimum wage for many who are classified as independent contractors.
That leaves them incredibly vulnerable, doesn't it?
Completely vulnerable to income instability, isolation, and heightened physical, economic, and mental risks. And data consistently shows that these arrangements disproportionately affect already vulnerable demographics.
Like who?
Including migrants, minorities, women, and low-income individuals. It's a powerful point that the glossy rhetoric of freedom and entrepreneurship used to promote the gig economy often just masks the deep structural vulnerabilities and the potential for a new form of corporate control.
So while we're told we're gaining freedom, we might actually be trading a degree of ownership and stability for a form of systemic vulnerability.
That's a good way to put it.
And this isn't just about jobs. It broadens into profound philosophical implications when we talk about the overall decline of traditional ownership through the subscription economy. What are the long-term consequences for our personal agency, our sense of security, and our ability to accumulate wealth when core assets or services are perpetually accessed but never truly owned?
It's a subtle but significant power shift. When you subscribe to software, streaming entertainment, or even a car, you're paying for access, not equity.
Right, you're always renting.
Always renting, never owning.
Yeah.
This means you can't build personal wealth or leverage an asset you don't possess. Imagine paying a lifetime for your favorite music collection, only for it to disappear if a streaming service goes under, or your access is revoked.
Yeah. That's terrifying.
This continuous outflow of capital, even in seemingly small monthly payments, limits opportunities for long-term savings and investment, essentially creating a perpetual economic dependency on the very platforms that offer the convenience.
It's like being on a treadmill.
Exactly. Always running, but never quite getting ahead, because a portion of your income is constantly being siphoned off for basic access.
And that sense of dependency isn't limited to ownership, is it? It extends powerfully into how debt functions as a modern form of constraint.
Oh, absolutely.
Because debt, in a strange way, has become the invisible chains of our time, subtly eroding autonomy for millions.
It's one of the most pervasive and insidious mechanisms of social control, creating what some astute observers refer to as neo-servitude or debt bondage.
Neo-servitude, wow.
Consider the staggering burden of student loan debt. It now exceeds $1 trillion in the U.S.,
$1 trillion.
trapping millions of individuals in a financial quagmire. This isn't just about money. It limits career choices, delays fundamental life milestones like buying a home or starting a family,
Right.
and forces individuals into the labor market under potentially unfavorable conditions simply to service that debt. Their entire future is dictated by repayment.
And it's not just student loans. Medical debt can utterly cripple households, wiping out savings and forcing impossible choices. And debt incurred through the criminal justice system disproportionately burdens already low-income and minority families, perpetuating vicious cycles of poverty and severely hindering any chance of wealth accumulation.
It feels designed to keep people trapped, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, it's incredibly difficult for individuals to break free.
It creates a stark paradox. Individuals are legally free, technically able to make their own choices, but functionally bound.
Functionally bound. Explain that.
Their labor and life choices are profoundly constrained by the incessant need to repay creditors. It's not overt chains, but invisible ones that dictate where they can live, what jobs they can take, and what risks they can afford. We see this acutely in what's been termed the nationwide comfort gap, where even seemingly high incomes often fall woefully short of comfortable living.
The numbers here are truly a wake-up call. The $100K Mirage data illustrates that in almost all major U.S. cities, the salary a single adult needs to live comfortably, that's covering basic needs, a few wants, and crucially, putting aside money for savings or debt repayment according to the 50-30-20 rule, significantly exceeds the local median household income.
It's shocking, really.
In Indianapolis, for example, the needed salary is over $18,000 higher than the median income. In Memphis, that gap is staggering, over $31,000.
Wow.
So while $100,000 sounds like a lot, in many places it might just cover basic needs, but it frequently leaves insufficient room for those wants, and most critically, for savings debt repayment, leaving earners financially constrained despite what sounds like a comfortable salary.
And this isn't simply an unfortunate coincidence. It's reinforced by what we've termed calendar capitalism.
Calendar capitalism, what's that?
Consumer behavior is heavily driven by ritualized cycles, particularly holidays, which contribute significantly to this spiraling debt burden. We are, in a sense, conditioned to consume.
You mean like the holiday shopping frenzies we all get swept up in?
Exactly. The winter holiday season, for example, represents the apex of this cycle. The National Retail Federation projected average per-person spending for the 2024 winter holidays to reach a record $902.
$900 per person?
Yep. Total U.S. retail sales for November and December hit a record $994.1 billion in 2024.
Almost $1 trillion.
And globally, online sales alone during that period reached an estimated $1.2 trillion. It's an economic tidal wave.
And a massive chunk of that is financed by debt, isn't it?
Got it. Data shows that over 1/3 of U.S. consumers took on debt for the 2024 holiday season, averaging $1,181 per person, primarily through credit cards. It's a huge jump from the previous year.
Wow.
And we're seeing increasing delinquency rates for credit cards, which now stand at $1.21 trillion.
Trillion.
And auto loans, which are at $1.66 trillion. These aren't just statistics, they're millions of people struggling.
It's staggering.
This concentrated debt-financed consumption logically pressures personal savings rates to rock bottom. It makes it incredibly difficult for households to consistently accumulate wealth, effectively reinforcing their dependency on the economic system.
So it's a continuous cycle.
A self-perpetuating cycle that keeps individuals bound, constantly chasing the next paycheck to service the last purchase.
So if we're increasingly accessing instead of owning and falling deeper into debt, who is truly benefiting from this profound shift?
Right, that's the key question.
This inevitably brings us to the concentration of wealth and what some observers have called industrial feudalism.
This concept speaks to how the increasing dominance of finance and asset ownership, a phenomenon often called financialization, creates incredibly rigid class boundaries.
How so?
Wealth, now often held in abstract forms like stocks, property, and various financial assets, along with access to credit based on those assets, increasingly determines life chances. This fundamentally contradicts the meritocratic narrative that hard work alone will get you ahead.
So it's not just about working hard anymore.
Not solely, no. Rising asset prices mean more wealth is needed to simply move up, while credit secured against existing assets acts as a powerful shield, protecting the wealthy from falling down. It creates a seemingly impenetrable fortress.
So the system is essentially rigged to keep those who already have wealth and power and making it exponentially harder for others to even get a foot in the door.
That's the argument, yeah.
This concentration of wealth then translates into serious political and societal influence through what we can describe as oligarchic mechanisms of control.
Absolutely. The primary objective of financial control, which manifests in things like campaign finance, intense lobbying, dark money in politics, and the use of offshore havens, is fundamentally wealth defense.
Protecting what they have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about protecting and expanding existing fortunes, often at the expense of broader public interest. Beyond that, we're seeing the emergence of new forms of concentrated, unaccountable power, sometimes referred to as digital oligarchy, techno-feudalism, or surveillance capitalism.
Okay, those are heavy terms.
They are. They stem directly from control over vast amounts of data and the digital platforms we all rely on, posing a significant threat to individual autonomy and democratic norms. It's a new kind of kingdom, ruled by data.
And this isn't a new phenomenon, is it? We can trace these patterns of elite influence back through history, almost as if they're embedded in the human condition.
Oh, definitely.
Take the Medici family, for example, whose story often feels ripped from a political thriller.
The Medici in Renaissance Florence are a perfect historical illustration of this soft capture of institutions.
Soft capture.
Instead of abolishing Republican institutions like the Signoria or the Grand Council, they systematically infiltrated and manipulated them. They used their immense banking wealth to dictate who was elected, who received lucrative state contracts, and who benefited from their vast financial operations.
So they kept the structure but controlled it from within.
Precisely. This preserved the appearance of republicanism, pacifying the populace and maintaining a veneer of freedom, while actual power became utterly concentrated in their hands. They leveraged their role as God's bankers to even influence theological interpretations, intertwining spiritual authority with temporal gain.
Wow.
It's a subtle yet profound subversion where the form of democracy remains, but its substance is hollowed out.
And our Rothschilds, their story is legendary, almost mythical.
The Rothschilds pioneered a tightly integrated, family-centric, multinational banking structure that gave them unparalleled reach and coordinated international action.
A global network.
Absolutely. They diversified risk across different economies and played a pivotal role in large-scale financial operations like government bond issues, essentially underwriting wars and peace treaties alike. This structural advantage, demonstrated by their bailout of Barings during the 1890 crisis, showed their systemic importance.
But their success also fueled conspiracy theories, right?
Unfortunately, yes. It fueled persistent anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, which scapegoated them for broader economic woes rather than attributing those issues to systemic problems, highlighting how concentrated wealth can become a target for misinformation and fear.
And then, of course, the Rockefellers, whose name is synonymous with vast wealth and industrial might.
The Rockefeller family amassed their fortune primarily through John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company, which, through relentless vertical and horizontal integration, achieved a near monopoly in the American oil industry.
Total dominance.
Pretty much. They weren't content to stop there. They shrewdly diversified into banking and real estate. Crucially, they pioneered large-scale philanthropy through entities like the Rockefeller Foundation.
But that wasn't just charity.
Well, it wasn't merely charity. It became a powerful avenue for social engineering and projecting influence on a global scale. They were also pioneers in the concept of the single-family office, centralizing their long-term wealth management and the structured deployment of their capital, which enabled immense multi-generational influence over education, medicine, and public policy. 2. The architecture of control, shaping perception and behavior in the digital age.
It's clear that economic structures can exert profound control, but let's shift now to how our very perception and behavior are being shaped, especially in this ubiquitous digital age.
Right, a crucial shift.
This brings us to a concept many of us have heard about but perhaps haven't fully grasped: surveillance capitalism.
Shoshana Zuboff, a brilliant scholar, coined this term to describe a distinct economic logic where private human experience is unilaterally claimed as behavioral data.
So not just data for service improvement.
Exactly. It's not just companies using data to improve their services, which can be benign. It's about systematically extracting what she calls behavioral surplus, the vast data exhaust of our daily lives, often beyond what's strictly necessary for a given service.
So every tap, every click, every scroll, every pause you make online generates this invisible data. And then what happens with it?
This raw data is fed into increasingly sophisticated machine intelligence. This AI analyzes it not just to predict, but increasingly to shape and nudge our future human behavior.
Shape our behavior? How?
These highly sophisticated predictions are then packaged and sold as prediction products in what Zuboff terms behavioral futures markets. Advertisers are the primary buyers, using this unparalleled foresight to target us with uncanny precision. But other sectors are increasingly interested in influencing behavior with this deep understanding of our future selves.
And we're not really aware of this.
It's a system that operates largely outside traditional norms of consent, because we're not truly aware of its full scope.
And it sounds like this is only going to intensify as AI becomes more prevalent, perhaps even becoming, as some suggest, reality's operating system.
That's a crucial and rather chilling progression. The trajectory of AI suggests it will transcend discrete tools and evolve into a foundational infrastructure, an AI operating system, AIOS, that actively shapes and manages the very fabric of our reality. From traffic lights to search results, from personalized news feeds to recommended purchases. In this AIOS world, human perception and our most subtle emotional responses risk becoming core commodities.
Perception as a commodity.
Yeah, neuromarketing techniques, supercharged by AI's analytical power, could transform the fundamental act of perceiving and feeling into a monetizable and manipulable process. Imagine your attention itself becoming a product.
So our attention, our feelings, our very perception could literally become things to be bought and sold. That's quite a thought, almost like our inner world is being externalized and commodified.
It leads to what's termed the intention economy. AI's predictive power over our desires means algorithms can process vast data sets to simulate and anticipate human emotional and visual responses without direct physical involvement.
So they know what we want before we do.
Potentially, yes. This makes neuromarketing scalable and real-time in an unprecedented way, allowing for incredibly precise and pervasive influence over what we desire, how we react, and even what we think we want before we consciously recognize it. It's not just targeted advertising, it's preemptive desire creation.
It's not just about what we might buy, but how our reality is fundamentally curated. This is where algorithmic control and echo chambers come into terrifying play, shaping our curated reality in ways we often don't even recognize.
Exactly. Algorithms on major social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are not designed to prioritize truth or even diverse viewpoints.
What's their goal then?
Their prime directive is optimizing for engagement. This inadvertently, or perhaps intentionally, amplifies misinformation, sensationalism, and political polarization, because emotionally charged or extreme content often drives more clicks, likes, and shares.
It's a feedback loop that rewards the outrageous.
Precise.
And this creates those infamous echo chambers and filter bubbles, doesn't it? Where we're primarily exposed to content that confirms what we already believe, while any dissenting or uncomfortable voices are filtered out.
Right.
Almost as if they don't exist.
Precisely. Echo chambers reinforce pre-existing beliefs, while filter bubbles create an algorithmic filtering of diverse viewpoints, sometimes without our knowledge. This effectively constructs personalized realities for each user, dramatically limiting their exposure to anything that might challenge their current worldview.
And over time,
this constant algorithmically curated feed subtly trains users' tastes and preferences. It's a form of algorithmic habitus formation, where our dispositions and inclinations are shaped more by platform logic and commercial interests than by traditional socialization sources like family, education, or even our own critical thinking.
And it all functions within what often feels like a pervasive digital panopticon.
That's a chilling analogy, derived from Jeremy Bentham's prison design. The pervasive surveillance inherent in these digital environments, the knowledge that everything we do online is potentially observed, can lead to widespread self-censorship.
Because we know we're being watched.
Exactly. Users know, consciously or subconsciously, that they are constantly monitored, which can subtly influence what they post, how they interact, and even what opinions they feel comfortable expressing. This creates a very powerful, subtle system of influence where compliance is encouraged through constant, even if unseen, observation. You become your own guard.
And if that wasn't enough to erode public trust, we now have deepfakes and voice cloning, which represent a profoundly potent and disturbing threat to authenticity itself. It's hard to know what's real anymore.
The realism of AI-generated media is truly astonishing, making it almost impossible for the untrained eye or ear to distinguish fact from fabrication. We've already seen concrete examples of political manipulation, like the fabricated video of Ukrainian President Zelensky ordering troops to surrender early in the Russian invasion, which quickly went viral. Or the slowed-down video of Nancy Pelosi subtly altered to make her appear intoxicated.
I remember that one.
More recently, there was the AI-generated voice of Joe Biden, used in robocalls urging Democrats not to vote in the New Hampshire primary, and fake audio of a Slovakian party leader allegedly discussing election rigging.
It's happening everywhere.
These aren't just isolated incidents. We've seen AI-generated images of Donald Trump with black voters that were widely circulated, manipulated images of smiling female wrestlers during an arrest in India, and a deep-fake video of a U.S. congressman in Taiwan promising military aid contingent on election results.
That's terrifying for democracy and the very fabric of public trust. When you can't believe your eyes or ears, what can you believe?
It's a fundamental challenge.
But these technologies aren't just for politics, are they? They're also being weaponized for increasingly sophisticated financial fraud.
Unfortunately, yes. AI voice cloning enables highly convincing impersonations for elaborate financial scams, preying on trust and urgency. A CEO was famously tricked into transferring $243,000 by a voice clone perfectly mimicking his boss.
Wow.
Complete with a natural accent and familiar intonations. A bank manager authorized a staggering $35 million transfer after being deceived by an AI-generated voice.
$35 million.
Yep. Even a finance worker at Arup, a global engineering firm, approved a $25.6 million transaction after participating in a deepfake video conference call featuring eerily realistic clones of senior executives.
That's incredible.
And we're seeing voice cloning increasingly used in more personal emergency or grandparent scams, where criminals impersonate distressed loved ones to solicit urgent money transfers.
Preying on emotions.
The realism preys directly on emotional responses, making people drop their guard, and can even bypass traditional biometric security systems like voice recognition. It's a new frontier of deception.
It's like science fiction becoming our everyday reality, all designed to subtly manipulate. Which leads us seamlessly to neuromarketing, the subtle science of desired behavior, taking manipulation to a deeper, almost subconscious level.
This is where corporations leverage cutting-edge neuroscientific tools like fMRI, EEG, and eye tracking to understand and subtly influence consumer behavior at a subconscious level.
How exactly?
For advertising, they pre-test ads to measure precise emotional engagement. For example, Frito-Lay reportedly used EEG to analyze consumer reactions to Super Bowl ads, finding that humor elicited strong positive responses in brain activity.
So they know it makes us tick, literally.
In a way, yes. The National Cancer Institute even used fMRI to test anti-smoking ads, finding that higher brain activity in certain regions correlated with more calls to their hotline. They're literally optimizing for what bypasses our rational defenses.
So they're looking inside our brains to figure out what works. It's remarkable to consider the implications of that level of insight into human behavior.
And it goes beyond ads. They also apply this to packaging and product design. Frito-Lay famously changed their chip bags from shiny to matte after neuromarketing research indicated a subconscious negative response to the shiny packaging.
Even if people didn't say they disliked it.
Exactly. Even though consumers didn't consciously report it, Kellogg's revamped packaging based on eye tracking data to shift consumer focus to brand heritage. This extends to fundamental aspects like branding, website user experience, eBay, for instance, has used fMRI to optimize user responses to their site, and even the physical layouts of retail stores.
Like IKEA.
Like IKEA's labyrinthine design, which is engineered to guide customers through almost their entire product range.
And what about pricing? Can they manipulate us there too? It feels like the oldest trick in the book.
It is, but now with a neuroscientific twist. Research explores the neural correlates of price perception.
Okay.
Studies have shown that for identical luxury goods, a higher perceived price can actually activate brain regions associated with experienced pleasure.
So paying more feels better sometimes.
Paradoxically, yes, suggesting that the price itself can shape the subjective experience of value. Techniques like price anchoring, where a high price is shown first to make later prices seem reasonable, are built on these biases. It's about engineering the perception of value, not just the cost.
This sounds incredibly powerful, almost like a superpower, but also deeply unsettling. It makes me wonder about the ethical boundaries when you're probing the very essence of human decision-making.
The most fundamental concern, the one that truly keeps researchers up at night, is whether neuromarketing bypasses rational decision-making entirely to manipulate consumers without their full awareness, thereby undermining their autonomy.
The buy button fear.
Exactly. There's a pervasive fear, almost a Frankenstein fear, of discovering a literal buy button in the brain, or of deploying stealth neuromarketing techniques that influence behavior subconsciously without any conscious consent. While some argue it's merely a more sophisticated form of persuasion, the intent to target subconscious vulnerabilities raises significant questions about respecting individuals as autonomous agents, capable of rational choice. It's about the very nature of free will.
And privacy, I imagine, is an enormous concern when you're talking about direct brain data. It feels like the ultimate personal frontier.
Absolutely. Neuroimaging data is inherently incredibly sensitive. It can reveal not just emotional states and preferences, but deep-seated biases, fears, or even predispositions to certain health conditions that individuals absolutely do not want disclosed.
That's deeply personal information.
Extremely. There are significant concerns about who owns this neural data, how it's stored, who has access, and how it could be used against individuals. The inherent opacity of many commercial neuromarketing operations only exacerbates these fears.
And vulnerable groups.
There are also worries about exploiting vulnerable groups, like children, the elderly, or those struggling with addiction or financial issues who may be less able to resist these neuro-informed persuasive tactics. Ultimately, some critics argue that reducing human behavior to mere neural patterns for commercial gain risks objectifying individuals and diminishes human dignity itself.
So, the technology is new, but the fundamental idea of shaping public perception isn't. This reminds me of manufactured consent, a concept that has deep historical roots and continues to resonate today.
Indeed. The seminal figure here is Edward Bernays, a nephew of Sigmund Freud and widely considered a pioneer of public relations.
Bernays, right.
In his highly influential 1928 book, Propaganda, Bernays argued that the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. He wasn't subtle about his intentions.
He viewed the public as an irrational herd that needed guidance, almost like a shepherd guiding sheep from an unseen elite, an invisible government.
Precisely. Bernays believed this elite could wield power by understanding and manipulating symbols, tapping into hidden motives, and subtly shaping public opinion. He famously rebranded the negatively connotated term propaganda to the more palatable public relations, recognizing the power of language to reframe perception. His methods often involved creating circumstances and leveraging influential figures to sway the public mind, frequently by oversimplifying complex issues into easily digestible, emotionally resonant narratives. He openly saw politics as essentially a form of marketing, applying principles of crowd psychology to societal control.
And later, Herman and Chomsky expanded on this with their propaganda model, arguing that even in nominally free societies, mass media can serve to inculcate individuals with the values, beliefs, and codes of behavior that will integrate them into the institutional structures, effectively upholding the status quo.
Yes, it's a systemic rather than overt form of control.
How does that work systemically?
This happens through a series of filters. For example, corporate ownership of media outlets often prioritizes profit and advertiser interests over objective reporting.
The bottom line.
Exactly. Advertising imperatives demand advertiser-friendly content, subtly influencing what gets covered and how. And a heavy reliance on official sources, like government statements or corporate press releases, often leads to the media echoing dominant narratives without sufficient critical scrutiny.
So the powerful get their message out easily.
The result is a media landscape that, even without explicit censorship, tends to reinforce existing power structures.
We've seen historical examples of this narrative control playing out time and again. Operation Mockingbird, for instance, remains a chilling accusation.
Operation Mockingbird refers to an alleged large-scale CIA program that began in the early Cold War years. The goal was to manipulate domestic and foreign media for propaganda purposes, reportedly recruiting hundreds of prominent American journalists to disseminate CIA narratives and gather intelligence.
Using journalists for spying and propaganda?
That's the allegation. While the exact scope and nature of the program are debated and some specifics remain unconfirmed, the 1975 Church Committee confirmed that the CIA indeed cultivated relationships with journalists and engaged in covert media operations. Carl Bernstein's reporting later claimed over 400 U.S. press members secretly worked with the CIA.
400?
It points to a systematic effort to subtly subvert press freedom and shape public opinion through ostensibly independent channels.
And the Gulf of Tonkin incident is another textbook case of how narratives can be manipulated to achieve profound political objectives.
That's a classic. In August 1964, the Johnson administration actively manipulated the narrative presented to Congress and the public, selectively presenting ambiguous intelligence as conclusive proof of an unprovoked attack on U.S. naval vessels.
Even though it wasn't clear an attack happened.
Right. This was done to secure near-unanimous congressional approval for escalation in Vietnam, the infamous Gulf of Tonkin resolution. The mainstream media, for the most part, initially acted largely as a conduit for this official narrative, amplifying the administration's claims. And framing the events in a way that favored the government's position. Declassified NSA studies later revealed that the attack on August 4th was likely born of confusion, faulty equipment, and misinterpretations, not a deliberate act of aggression. The narrative, however, had already served its purpose.
Even official investigations into tragedies can be accused of bias, can't they? Like the Lusitania inquiry after the ship sank in 1915.
The official British inquiry into the sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, while presented as impartial, was widely accused of bias and of suppressing evidence. Its findings, which stated the ship was hit by 2 torpedoes despite strong evidence suggesting only one, and which largely exonerated the Cunard Line and its captain, conveniently aligned with the British government's position.
So it served a political purpose?
Arguably, yes. This condemned Germany and helped to galvanize public opinion in the US and Britain, potentially for propaganda purposes, aiding in the push towards war. It highlights how official investigations, even into devastating events, can be shaped to serve political agendas.
And on an even more disturbing note, the Bayer HIV blood scandal. This example chills me to the bone, showing a terrifying level of corporate control over information and a shocking prioritization of profit over human life.
This is indeed a deeply unsettling case of corporate malfeasance. Internal documents and news reports revealed that Bayer's Cutter Products division knowingly sold unheeded HIV-contaminated blood products to countries in Asia and Latin America, including Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, and Argentina, well into 1985.
After they knew it was dangerous and had a safer product.
Yes, after a safer, heat-treated version was readily available and had been approved in the U.S. in February 1984. This callous offloading strategy, where they sold the dangerous product overseas because it was cheaper than destroying it, led to widespread infections and devastating lawsuits.
That's horrific.
It starkly demonstrates how information can be controlled and public well-being shockingly sacrificed when powerful entities prioritize financial gain above all else. It's a profound betrayal of trust.
These are older examples, some even from a century ago, but modern digital manipulation seems to amplify these tactics to an unprecedented degree.
It absolutely does. Digital technologies allow for greater reach, incredible precision, and instantaneous global dissemination. Algorithms, as we discussed, prioritize engagement, making it exponentially harder for individuals to discern truth from sophisticated falsehoods.
Right, the echo chambers again.
Micro-targeting political ads, famously seen with Cambridge Analytica, exploits individuals' precise psychological profiles, their biases, and their deepest fears, crafting messages designed to trigger specific, often irrational responses.
Targeting our weak spots.
And authoritarian regimes leverage digital surveillance, like China's Great Firewall and social credit system, and pervasive censorship to manage online discourse with an iron fist. The result is a fragmented media ecosystem where it's increasingly difficult to discern objective truth, and people are often stuck in personalized echo chambers.
Making it hard to act together.
Exactly. hindering any unified collective action for reform or critical thought. 3. The psychological underpinnings. Why we accept the new normal.
So given all these intricate layers of control, from economic structures to digital manipulation and historical precedents, why do we as individuals so often accept this new normal with seemingly little resistance?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
There's a powerful psychological underpinning to it all, starting with the almost irresistible allure of flattery and validation.
It's a deep-seated, almost primal human tendency to accept lies that flatter us more easily than truths that humble us.
We like hearing good things about ourselves.
Of course. People seeking power understand this instinctively. They craft stories and systems that make us feel important, chosen, superior. You see this playbook in cults and political rhetoric that promises easy answers, and certainly in advertising that sells not just a product, but an upgrade to your self-image. It's incredibly seductive because it speaks directly to our ego and our desire to feel significant.
Right. Social media platforms seem to have perfected this, designed specifically to flatter us and keep us hooked.
They are quite literally engineered for it. Every share, every follow or notification creates a curated self-image, a digital mirror reflecting a version of you that's smarter, funnier, more attractive, more insightful than you ever dared to believe.
It feels good.
It does. The algorithm understands what even you might not. That you crave validation often, more than you crave truth. And the deeper you fall into that validation loop, the more easily you can be led, because you're emotionally invested in that flattering lie, that idealized self.
So flattery creates identity.
Flattery creates identity. And identity in a world where meaning can feel fleeting is one of the hardest things to give up.
This reminds me so much of celebrity worship and how devoted fans often react to scandals involving their idols, rationalizing away any negative behavior.
It's a perfect and powerful parallel. Devoted fans often engage in intense motivated reasoning and confirmation bias, selectively interpreting information to maintain a positive view of their idol.
They ignore the bad stuff.
They'll rationalize negative behavior, blame external factors like the media or haters, or minimize the severity of any transgression to preserve their idealized image of that person. This mirrors a broader societal pattern of defending beliefs to maintain identity, even when confronted with starkly contradictory evidence.
It's not about truth.
It's not about truth. It's about preserving a comfortable narrative, a comfortable self-perception, and a comfortable reality.
And this leads us to the disturbing concept of the clean button, how we distance ourselves from the consequences of our choices, especially when those consequences might be uncomfortable or ugly.
Most systems of harm survive not because people genuinely enjoy causing pain, but because the interface is clean.
The interface is clean. What does that mean?
Decisions are made, whether it's the products you buy, the companies you support, or the systemic benefits you derive, without direct visual or emotional connection to the real, often ugly, consequences of those choices. Suffering becomes tolerable, even invisible, when it's abstract.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly, when you don't have to witness it firsthand. A clean button, a frictionless transaction, or an abstract policy allows you to lie to yourself, making the choice feel sanitized and controlled, freeing you from direct moral culpability.
So if we had to see every consequence, every person who suffered because of our choices, would we still make the same decisions?
Probably not in many cases.
It suggests our values might not be deeply held principles, but simply reactive responses to immediate discomfort.
That's the painful truth. The clean button obscures. It reveals how little it takes to get people to comply, how little resistance is often offered, and how readily we are to believe that if everything around us looks clean, then what we're doing can't possibly be dirty.
And this is tied to protecting our ego.
Deeply tied to ego preservation. The human brain prioritizes feeling secure and avoiding shame above almost all else. People will subconsciously twist the world until it confirms your view, literally creating a new truth if objective reality doesn't provide comfort.
We rewrite reality.
This involves activating deeply ingrained defense mechanisms like denial, rationalization, and projection to preserve internal equilibrium. Our sense of ourselves as good, moral people. It's a continuous, often unconscious editing of reality.
And sometimes guilt itself can be strategic, not a genuine moral signal for change.
Exactly. Guilt is not always, or even primarily, a moral signal that leads to corrective action. It can be a strategic mechanism to protect one's self-identity and allow harmful actions to continue unexamined.
How is guilt strategic?
It provides a kind of moral payment, or penance. I feel bad, therefore I must be a good person, convincing you that you're still a decent person precisely because you feel guilt. But the ones who feel guilt most intensely are sometimes those who've done the worst things. Not because they're more moral, but because their internal survival depends on believing they still are.
So guilt doesn't always lead to change?
Sometimes it just lingers, allowing harmful behavior to persist under a veneer of self-awareness.
This all ties into how success itself is socially constructed, trapping us in a kind of gilded cage, a beautiful prison we willingly enter.
It's a powerful metaphor. The dominant socially constructed definition of success, which typically involves high incomes, significant debt for education or housing, and long hours dedicated to corporate or professional structures, inherently promotes dependence on the very systems that offer these rewards.
We chase the rewards but become dependent.
Individual aspirations are subtly channeled towards a path that, while bringing social recognition and material comfort, simultaneously limits true autonomy and locks individuals into specific economic roles and consumption patterns. You're incentivized to pursue this path, to climb this ladder, even if it compromises your true freedom and intrinsic desires.
And the parallels between our adult lives and never-ending high school are quite striking here. I've certainly felt that many times.
They truly are uncanny. Think about time discipline. The rigid school bell schedule, dictating your day from first period to last, continues seamlessly into the workplace's emphasis on clocking in and out, the relentless deadlines, the scheduled meetings that fill every minute. School rules and punishments mirror company policies, HR warnings, and the ultimate threat of termination.
Grades become performance reviews.
Exactly. Academic grades become KPIs and performance reviews in the workplace. And just as students are constantly monitored by teachers, employees are observed by supervisors, reinforcing hierarchies and ensuring compliance.
And creativity isn't always valued.
Both systems prioritize punctuality, obedience, neatness, and adherence to established procedures over individual creativity or critical dissent. It's a meticulously designed system to cultivate a docile, manageable workforce.
So, in essence, our schooling, influenced by models like the Prussian system of universal education designed for efficiency, implicitly teaches us obedience, conformity, discipline, and unquestioning acceptance of authority.
Pretty much.
It's preparing us for subordinate roles in a capitalist workforce from a very young age, before we even understand the concept of a capitalist workforce.
It's a powerful hidden curriculum that shapes our dispositions, our very approach to authority and work, before we even consciously understand it. And this deep conditioning makes it exponentially harder to speak out, to challenge the system, or to question authority.
Right.
Which, tragically, leads to the profound cost of silence.
Yes, that pervasive human tendency we have to prioritize harmony over honesty. It can lead to self-silencing, to biting our tongues, simply to avoid conflict or being labeled difficult or uncooperative.
It's an incredibly common and damaging pattern. When you consistently prioritize politeness or maintaining external peace over speaking your truth, you inadvertently teach others to disregard your needs and boundaries.
Because you never state them.
Exactly, because they're never clearly articulated. This leads to a slow, simmering resentment, and ultimately a form of self-betrayal. What goes unsaid doesn't simply disappear. It festers and grows teeth within you, slowly eroding your relationships and your very sense of identity.
A heavy internal cost.
A profound internal cost for maintaining external quiet.
And this continuous self-silencing, this pattern of obedience, can eventually dull our sense of agency itself.
People will go to astonishing lengths to protect their image and avoid alienation, judgment, being seen as difficult, or being perceived as a troublemaker. Obedience becomes a core survival instinct, ingrained through years of social conditioning.
And the danger.
And here's the insidious part. Each act of obedience, each time you suppress your true feelings or go along with something you disagree with, it subtly dulls your sense of agency. It makes silence and compliance easier the next time, until commands no longer feel like commands. They just feel like the way things are.
The default setting.
The natural order of things. This effectively weakens free will, making it harder and harder to question or resist, even when something feels fundamentally wrong to your core.
4. Deeper currents. Historical parallels and philosophical questions.
It's clear that these intricate mechanisms of control are deeply embedded in modern society, almost woven into the fabric of our lives. But are there historical parallels?
Oh, definitely. Let's look at echoes of historical labor control, like the shift from sharecropping to gig work, a comparison that might surprise some listeners.
Sharecropping, in the post-emancipation American South, provides a chillingly clear blueprint for how profound dependency and control can be systematically reestablished, even after overt slavery has been abolished.
How so? It sounded like freedom at first.
It was, on the surface, presented as an opportunity for independence for formerly enslaved people, allowing them to work their own plot of land. But it quickly devolved into a sophisticated system of economic bondage.
How did that happen? Where was the loophole?
The linchpin was debt peonage. Landowners provided credit for seeds, tools, and supplies at exorbitant interest rates, often manipulating the books.
Trapping them in debt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unpredictable crop yields, market fluctuations, and frequently unscrupulous accounting practices by landowners trapped sharecroppers in a cycle of debt they could often never repay. Debts were carried over year after year, binding them inextricably to the landowner and the land itself.
And they couldn't leave.
Laws frequently favored landowners, making it illegal for indebted sharecroppers to leave the land or sell their crops elsewhere until their debts were settled. So even though they had more day-to-day autonomy than slaves, this economic bondage severely restricted their mobility and ability to achieve true financial independence.
So it really just maintained the old power dynamics, but with a new name and a new structure.
Precisely. Sharecropping effectively maintained the socioeconomic hierarchy of the Old South, keeping black labor tied to agriculture, often on the same plantations where they had been enslaved. It was a strategic adaptation by the planter class to retain control over labor in the post-emancipation era.
So slavery evolved.
The core thesis that slavery evolved rather than disappeared highlights this continuity in the fundamental logic of labor control and surplus value extraction, even as the mechanisms transformed. We see powerful parallels in the commodification of labor, debt as an invisible binding tool, social institutions shaping compliant subjects, and the enduring entanglement of racial hierarchy with capitalist structures.
It's the same dance, just with different steps.
Well put.
This idea of power concentrating over time, persisting across different eras and societal shifts, brings us back to the oligarchic tendency. It's clearly not just a modern phenomenon, is it?
No, it's a persistent, almost inherent pattern in human societies, a recurring theme throughout history. Oligarchy, literally rule by the few, describes the functional exercise of power, particularly the conversion of concentrated material wealth into political influence, often operating subtly within ostensibly democratic frameworks.
So it's about who really holds power.
It's about who truly pulls the levers of power, regardless of the official titles. It's distinct from, but often overlaps with, plutocracy, rule by the wealthy, or aristocracy, rule by inherited nobility.
So that soft capture we saw with the Medici in Florence, that's a perfect historical illustration.
Exactly. The Medici systematically infiltrated and manipulated Florence's republican institutions. They preserved the appearance of democracy, the rituals and titles, but concentrated real power through controlled elections, extensive patronage networks, and significant fiscal leverage.
Keeping up appearances.
This was a subtle yet profound subversion of republican ideals, demonstrating how power can be centralized and exercised without overt dictatorship, simply by controlling the rules of the game and who gets to play.
And this often gets tangled up with perceptions of secret societies and hidden influence, doesn't it? The very idea of the Illuminati or groups like Freemasonry stirs up these notions of shadowy figures pulling strings behind the scenes.
It does. Freemasonry, as a fraternal order, emerged emphasizing Enlightenment ideals like liberty, equality, and rational governance. Many key figures in the American Revolution, like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, were Masons.
Right.
And lodges often provided vital networks for sharing revolutionary ideas. However, Freemasonry has also been historically perceived as a repository of hidden knowledge and the subject of persistent conspiracy theories alleging control over governments and a new world order.
The conspiracies are often pretty wild.
While Freemasonry employs symbolism and ritual that can be interpreted esoterically, the popular conception of a secret of the 33rd degree as a cult or supremely powerful is largely a constructed narrative that's been projected onto the Masonic structure from external sources. Yet the idea of inheriting ancient wisdom serves a powerful symbolic function for both its members and observers, imbuing its practices with perceived depth and timeless significance.
And what about black fraternal organizations like the Divine Nine? They also adopted structures of secrecy, which seems paradoxical given their mission of uplift.
It's a fascinating paradox. Groups like the Divine Nine sounded for racial uplift, civil rights, and community building, adopted structures of secrecy, ritual, and selective membership, mirroring traditional white fraternal orders.
Why the secrecy?
This was absolutely crucial for collective action against systemic oppression, allowing them to build strong internal bonds, cultivate leadership, and create networks of mutual support in a hostile external environment. However, they also, perhaps inevitably, created internal elite control mechanisms.
Like what?
Such as selective entry, financial barriers, and significant alumni influence. This introduces a tension between their broad community uplift goals and internal stratification, reflecting broader societal power dynamics even within movements for liberation.
And in more modern history, there are controversial allegations linking groups like the Italian P2 Lodge to intelligence agencies during the Cold War.
Yes. The P2 Lodge, a powerful and highly controversial secret society in Italy, has been linked to the CIA during the Cold War. Allegations suggest P2 was utilized as an asset in efforts to destabilize the left and maintain a pro-Western alignment in Italy, acting as a deep state network.
Deep state.
There are even claims, highly contested but persistent, that the Vatican Bank, the IOR, may have been used as a conduit for covert CIA funding during the Cold War. These claims are controversial and fiercely debated, but they speak to the persistent perception of hidden, concentrated influence operating outside of democratic accountability.
And the idea of Illuminati bloodlines takes this perception of hidden, inherited power even further, almost to a mythical level.
This theory speaks to deep-seated anxieties about the hidden continuity of power, a sense that the same families or forces have been in control for millennia.
Tracing power back centuries.
Attempts to trace lineages to ancient ruling classes like the Egyptian pharaohs or the Merovingians, or even speculative non-human progenitors like the Nephilim or Anunnaki, sometimes connecting to theories of reptilian-human hybrids. It functions as a grand unifying theory that attempts to explain perceived enduring elite influence by claiming a form of inherent right to rule,
Right.
derived from ancient wisdom, divine mandate, or superior genetic heritage. It's a narrative framework that tries to explain pervasive power structures by attributing them to specific hidden families or beings rather than systemic issues or economic forces. It gives a face to the unseen.
It's like a complete reframe of reality, which makes me think about the philosophical question. What if our reality itself is a simulation? It's a wild thought, but it's gaining traction.
The simulation hypothesis, famously popularized by Nick Bostrom, proposes that our reality might have an artificial computational foundation, that we are, in fact, living inside a sophisticated computer simulation.
Like the Matrix.
Pretty much. Bostrom's trilemma suggests that at least one of three improbable propositions must be true. Either humanity will go extinct before reaching a post-human stage, or post-human civilizations are unlikely to run vast numbers of ancestor simulations, or we are in fact living in a sophisticated simulation.
So it's statistically likely.
It serves as a valuable tool for intellectual exploration, forcing us to critically examine our fundamental assumptions about reality, consciousness, and the limits of our knowledge. It makes us ask, what if the rules we live by aren't fundamental but programmed?
This connects deeply to Jean Baudrillard's concepts of simulacrum and hyperreality, where simulations can precede and literally generate their real.
Baudrillard's work describes how, in a hyperreal world, signs and simulations can become more real than reality itself, effectively erasing the distinction between the two, potentially trapping our perception within an artificial construct.
Losing touch with the real.
As AI's power to create breathtakingly realistic simulations increases, and its pervasive influence through hyperpersonalization and algorithmic nudging grows, it forces a direct confrontation with profound philosophical questions about consciousness, agency, and free will.
If algorithms shape our choices.
If our choices, our desires, our very perceptions are constantly shaped by algorithms, does this diminish our capacity for true self-determination? Are we just complex lines of code within a grand program?
This all sounds like a plot from The Matrix, where people are imprisoned in a false reality without even knowing it.
It absolutely does. And this echoes the ancient Gnostic concept of the demiurge, a lesser, ignorant, or even malevolent creator god who fashioned the material world as inherently flawed or illusory, trapping sparks of divinity within it.
An ancient parallel.
Gnosticism posits that liberation comes from acquiring secret knowledge, or gnosis, to escape this false material reality. It's a striking historical and philosophical parallel to the Matrix analogy, where individuals are unknowingly imprisoned in a false reality created by an external power.
And this ties into the timeless idea of forbidden knowledge, the consistent pattern of authorities defining certain truths as dangerous.
There's a consistent, almost universal historical pattern where those in positions of authority frequently frame certain knowledge as forbidden or dangerous to maintain control.
Like the forbidden fruit.
This strategy is evident in ancient mythic justifications for hierarchy, like the story of the forbidden fruit and the historical suppression of heresy by religious institutions. It continues in modern guises through state secrecy, corporate censorship, sophisticated media manipulation, and even subtle control within educational systems. The forbidden fruit remains a potent metaphor for the perennial tension between the impulse to explore, question, and understand, and the systems that seek to define the boundaries of acceptable thought, to control what we think we know. V. Navigating the landscape. Strategies for cognitive sovereignty and resistance.
So after this deep dive into how our choices and perceptions are constantly being shaped, what can we do? How do we navigate this incredibly complex landscape?
It's a big question.
It seems the first step, and perhaps the most crucial, is cultivating genuine critical thinking and robust media literacy.
Building cognitive resilience is absolutely crucial in this hyper-information age. This involves actively questioning all information sources, asking who created it, what their underlying motivation might be, and what their potential biases are.
Don't just accept things at face value.
Exactly. It means verifying claims through lateral reading, which is about checking multiple diverse sources rather than just reading deeply into one. And it means learning to identify common propaganda techniques and logical fallacies, those sneaky rhetorical tricks designed to mislead.
Are there tools for that?
A very practical framework for this is ZIFT. Stop what you're doing, investigate the source, find better coverage, and trace claims to their original context. It's a mental self-defense system.
SIFT. Okay. And beyond just media, we also need to recognize and resist psychological manipulation itself, which, as we've discussed, is becoming increasingly sophisticated.
Absolutely. Awareness of common manipulation tactics, like gaslighting, emotional blackmail, guilt-tripping, or playing the victim, is the very first step.
Knowing the tricks.
Understanding how our own cognitive biases are exploited helps individuals identify when their own thinking might be skewed or nudged in a direction not of their own choosing. Practical strategies include setting strong personal boundaries, seeking objective perspectives from trusted, diverse sources, and practicing emotional self-care to reduce vulnerability to these tactics.
It's about fortifying your own mind against external influence.
That's a good way to put it.
Beyond individual defense, it seems fostering anti-fragile human systems and genuine community is vital. We're often told to be resilient, but this sounds like something more.
It is. Anti-fragile human systems are social, cognitive, economic, and educational structures designed not just to resist shocks, but to learn and strengthen from such challenges.
Getting stronger from challenges.
Exactly. This goes beyond mere resilience, which implies bouncing back to the original state. Anti-fragility means actually improving because of adversity. This involves actively promoting diverse forms of knowledge that can complement or critique AI's predominantly statistical and pattern-based approach.
Valuing different kinds of knowing.
It also means encouraging local, non-digitally mediated communities and forms of social organization, providing crucial counterbalances to pervasive digital influences and fostering real-world connection.
So valuing uniquely human skills then, those very things that AI can't replicate or understand.
Exactly. Cultivating and valuing uniquely human skills and experiences like intuition, empathy, creativity, ethical judgment, and complex problem solving that requires more than just data ensures that humanity retains multiple pathways for growth and meaning. Ensuring our potential is amplified without being eclipsed by technology. One emerging alternative model we've seen discussed in the source material, which aims for decentralized control, is decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs.
DAOs, right.
They offer a vision of collective governance and even owning physical assets, aiming for transparency and decentralized control through collective decision-making. While they face significant challenges like legal ambiguity and the risk of plutocracy if voting power concentrates,
Yeah, the rich could still control them.
they represent an attempt to create alternative models to traditional corporate structures, putting power back in the hands of the collective.
And finally, it sounds like we need to embrace a form of productive resistance and, perhaps most importantly, redefine what success even means to us beyond the metrics of the Gilded Cage.
Productive resistance goes beyond individual defense to collective action. This includes promoting widespread digital literacy, actively creating counter-narratives and alternative platforms, or what some call counter-imagination, new visions for society not dictated by algorithms.
Imagining different futures.
It means advocating for policies that protect privacy, autonomy, and cognitive liberty. And it involves actively exposing hidden surveillance or manipulation tactics when we encounter them.
And fundamentally challenging that socially constructed definition of success that has in many ways led us into this dependency, this quiet surrender of ownership and autonomy.
It absolutely requires a disciplined reprogramming of the self. We need to actively redefine success based on alternative, more intrinsically fulfilling values.
Like what?
Genuine personal fulfillment,
Right.
meaningful community contribution, boundless creative expression, time affluence, the luxury of time, not just money, or subjective well-being. These are values that may lead us away from rather than deeper into the gilded cage of endless consumption and debt.
It's about choosing different goals.
We can draw strength from powerful archetypal reframes, seeing ourselves as the hero who refuses the compromising return, as Prometheus or Lucifer bringing forbidden light and knowledge, as an exile finding wisdom in marginalization, or as the challenger of the false father, the system that claims to know what's best for us. It's a profound journey of liberation from imposed narratives.
We've peeled back the layers of the sharing economy and other modern systems today, revealing not just superficial convenience, but intricate architectures of control.
A lot to think about.
We've seen how economic structures, algorithmic influences, and subtle psychological nudges continually guide our choices, potentially leading us to accept a reality where ownership diminishes and our very experiences become commodified.
Understanding these mechanisms isn't about fostering paranoia or a sense of helplessness. It's about reclaiming agency, about understanding the game so you play more wisely or perhaps even change the rules.
Knowledge is power.
It's about recognizing that the clean button on the app, the easy subscription, or the flattering social media feed can mask deeper implications for our autonomy, our relationship with the world, and who truly holds power.
So as you navigate your day, as you scroll, as you click, as you consider what you own and what you simply access, consider this. In a world where what you own is increasingly replaced by what you access and where your very perception can be shaped for profit, what does it truly mean to be free? And how will you ensure that your values, not external narratives or algorithms, define your path to happiness and genuine well-being?